It is now a tradition at our conferences to kick off the main sessions with a review of where we've been and where we might be. Pleasingly, this is a slightly more positive prospect than it may have been in other recent times. So delighted to welcome to the stage Lucy Jones from Comscore Movies.
Morning team, here we are again. I think because I always overrun, they've given me 20 minutes this year, so we will stick to time. First thing before I forget, the slides will be circulated. You don't have to take pictures or make notes, but feel free to photograph me. Done my hair. So we're going to cover three things in our 20 minutes today. We're going to do a roundup of 2024 because it was quite a changeable year. We're going to look at 2025 so far and a forecast for where we're going this year, and we're also going to pull in some post-track data from our exit polling, where we're going to look at the outlook for what are the top titles of the year and people's levels of awareness and interest in those. So, let's begin. Here we are, lovely Picture House Central. Hokey cokey. So, 2024. Very significant periods where we really lost the momentum. I don't like to start with bad news, but this is the only bit really, and then we'll go on to the good stuff. So, May and October, we really saw these kind of dips in the box office. So May, traditionally, as you know, it's the kickoff of the summer season. So previous years, 2023 in May, we had Guardians of the Galaxy, we had The Little Mermaid, they're doing 35, 27 million, huge kickoff for the summer period. But May last year, we didn't really have that. We had some successful films, but they were doing 12 million, 15 million, 16 million. So we had Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, we had Fall Guy, we had If. So we did have big titles, but they were not the kind of blockbuster behemoths that we were used to seeing in that May period, mainly because of the delay in Deadpool and Wolverine because of the strikes. October, as you know, is not such a big significant time in the box office as May, but we were expecting a little bit more. Wild Robot was top, 14 million. We also had Joker 2 delivering 10, but we were expecting a bit more there. But October has not been such a big period. We had the strikes in 2023 that affected it. The previous biggest October, a couple of years ago, October 2022, the top title was Black Adam, 20 million. So we are used to having a 20 million hit in that period, especially with the school holidays, but we didn't really get that this year. So that's the bad news. So it was very much an improving picture over the year. So the biggest months were from the end of June with Inside Out 2 going into July and August, really great summer period there, and then particularly strong the last 6-7 weeks of the year, November, December. But at the lowest point in July, our biggest deficit versus 2023, we were 15 percentage points behind 2023, obviously comparing with the Barbenheimer period in 2023 did not help that, but we were minus 15% at our lowest, so thank goodness for the end of the year. So, I could barely fit the number of titles on at the end of the year because there were so many, so I had fun with my PowerPoint last week trying to fit all these on. So we definitely don't have this pipeline issue that we've had in previous years. You can see there's a lot of titles on this slide, and there were big hits consistently through the year. So it's not about the total number of titles that we've got a problem with. So 2024, we had in total just over 1,100 new titles released into cinemas, so 1,114 across the year, and 200 of those were saturation releases, meaning they played in 250 or more cinemas, and those are the highest numbers we've ever seen, like even compared with pre-pandemic, with the recent recovery years, those are the highest numbers ever. So it's not a pipeline issue anymore, the supply is there, it's more the spacing of the titles that is causing us a little bit of difficulty, especially if you're running a cinema with 1, 2, 3 screens. You don't want 5 of the biggest 10 releases of the year to come in a 6-week period at the end of the year because you can't physically play them all. So I think what we need to look at today is more about the bunching of the titles, and we'll look at how that's happening through 2025 as well. So, as I've just said, top 10 titles of the year, 5 of those in the gold bars all came in November and December, so it was a very fantastic end to the year, nice problem to have, but still probably a bit too much in such a short period of time. We're going to look at Wicked a lot later on today in terms of the marketing, see what we can learn in terms of connecting the audiences, starting that journey very early with the communicating with the right audience for that film. But yeah, it's probably not so helpful to have so many of those films coming at the same period, but we did have a lot of successes through 2024, and even though the shape of the year, what we've got on the right here is the purple line is 2023, the gold bar being 2024. The shape of the year was very different, where 23 had a huge summer, 24 had a really big end of the year, but we basically ended up in the same place. So on the left there, 2024 was flat versus 2023, but it was an 8% increase versus 2 years ago. So while it was a plateau year on year, we're very much moving in the right direction still. And just to give you the context, I don't want to keep harping back to 2019 because that was one of the biggest 2 years ever. Just to remind you, we're 22% below where we were pre-pandemic. So we haven't closed the gap yet, but every year or every 2 years, we're really kind of stepping up towards it. And when we come on to look at 2025, the forecast is for a 9% increase this year versus 2024. So even though we've had that plateau, we are expecting that kind of big step up again this year. I also just wanted to put this, before we move on to look more at 2025, I wanted to put it more in the global context. So the UK and Ireland makes up about 4 or 5% of the global box office. So for context, so we were flat year on year for 23-24. The global box office was -7%, so we definitely did better than the global trend, but that was very much dragged down by China. They had a really low 2024, but they're having a much stronger 25. So if we look more at our comparable markets, so compared with North America, they were 3% down year on year. International excluding China was 2% down. So for us to be flat, that was a better result than our comparables in terms of international and North America. And again, just to give you that kind of pandemic corresponding figure, the global box office last year was 30 billion. It was 7% down than the year before. Pre-COVID, it was 42 billion. So we've got a 12 billion gap still to make up worldwide. So this year, 2025, what a fantastic start. So this is showing the first 6 weeks of the year. I'll add another few weeks on. We're going to come up to the 6th of March on the slides, and then I'll do you a verbal update of the last sort of week and a half. But we've had such a strong start in 2025. So the first week of the year, we opened Nosferatu. It was number 1, did nearly £7 million. And I don't know what you guys were expecting. I was quite surprised because in our post-track survey, we've covered Nosferatu amongst the other new releases. Much younger than I was expecting. 47% of the viewers of Nosferatu on the opening weekend were under 25, and 54% were male, which was a much less skew than we saw for the previous title, The Northman, which was 61% male, so a much more even male-female split. The men more attracted by the director, everybody attracted by the type of film, but women really coming in because of Lily Rose Depp as the lead actress and the kind of storyline, the period setting, the costume, that kind of thing. So great demographic split across those, and we'll talk a little bit more in a few slides about the diversity of the different titles that we've had so far this year. So that first 6 weeks, we had new releases, Nosferatu, we had A Complete Unknown, we had We Live in Time, they're all in the top 5 for January, and then we also had really strong holdovers, so Mufasa and Sonic 3 for the family audiences. So really strong top 5, good mix of family films, new releases, adult films, that kind of thing. And what has happened since then? Yay, Bridget Jones. So Valentine's Day is week 7 on here, so the opening week of Bridget Jones and Captain America. It's this year's Barbenheimer. We've got one for the girls, one for the boys. Up the women, Bridget did 20 million opening week, Captain America did 10. Yes. But I don't want to diss Captain America, you know, he's a lovely guy. Of the post-COVID MCU titles, there's been 19 Marvel releases since 2020. Captain America opening week ranks it at number 9, so it's very much mid-table. It's ahead of Black Widow, it's just behind Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. So, you know, we're not saying Captain's done badly, we're just saying Bridget's done better. So what else has been happening? If I accumulate that data instead of showing it week by week, you can see we're running ahead all through the year, and then that big step up from that week 7. So up to the point where this chart ends on the 6th of March, we're 15% ahead year on year, and as it said in the headline there, this is the strongest start since 2020. 2020 had a really strong start before the lockdown 5 years ago this week. So we are on a par with where we were before the pandemic. We've lost a little bit of ground the last few weeks, but at this point we were 15% ahead. And again, putting that into the global context, domestic was 8% ahead, so North America 8% ahead. International was also quite strong. EMEA, which we are still a part of despite Brexit, still part of Europe, was 2% ahead. So we're really bucking that trend again where we're doing better than those international comparisons. However, with Easter being so late this year, school holidays being a bit later, we haven't had such a strong March. Currently we are 11% ahead, so we've lost a few points from where we showed there, but that's really because March last year we had 4 very strong titles. We had Dune 2, we had Kung Fu Panda, we had Ghostbusters, and we had Godzilla x Kong. They were all doing 15 million plus, and really the only March release this year that's going to do that is Snow White, coming this weekend. So we haven't had such a good March, but that's really just due to the timing of Easter, school holidays being a bit later, so we'll have a stronger April instead of a strong March. So just to wrap up then, the top films that are doing well so far this year, up to the 6th of March, we have these 10 titles that have done over 5 million each so far this year. And this is the kind of diversity point that I just wanted to make. We've got family titles, a mix of holdovers and new releases. We've got more of a female skew, so Bridget, Wicked, We Live in Time, and then a slight male skew on these. It's not very extreme, it's kind of 55% male, so Captain America, Nosferatu, Complete Unknown. But really good diversity, and what we're seeing is that the share of box office for the films outside the top 10 is improving year on year. So the top 10 films still take, kind of 30, 35, 40% of the box office, but it's much better than it was a couple of years ago, and every year it gets a bit better. So that diversity of offering for the different audiences is really helping. So let's talk a little bit more about my favourite one, Bridget Jones, which I saw last week and cried all the way through it. So sad. So we've tracked 4 Bridget films over the years, long gap obviously in the middle, and the highest was 48 million there, the Bridget Jones' Baby that came out in 2016. This one's on track to be there or thereabouts. On the slide it says it's forecast to do 46 million, it's currently forecast to do 47 and a half, so it keeps going, it's holding really well week on week. I think this is week 5. From the post-track survey, you'll be astonished to hear it's a majority female audience, so almost 2/3 female, 64%. But I was really surprised again how young the people are that are coming to this, and how many of them have not seen the previous films, even though they're on TV every week. They don't watch telly. So 44% of the Bridget Jones 4 audience was under 25, and only 20% was 45 plus, which is obviously the age of Bridget. And the younger people also gave higher ratings, they were more likely to recommend it than the older audience. And 2/3, 67% of the under 25 said they had seen the previous films, which was obviously lower than the audience, but a whopping 24% of people that came to see the 4th film have not seen any of the previous ones. And I'm thinking, how have you avoided them? But that's really great that a quarter of people that have come in to see it, they don't see it as a barrier that they haven't seen the other ones. They're willing to come, they've seen the marketing, they think it looks good, even though it's obviously depicting a much older character. They're still in for it because they've heard so much about it, they want to be part of that conversation. So Bridget, very much the top release of the year so far. What else have we got coming up? So let's look at the 4 quarters of the year. This is from our partners at Gower Street. We've probably got about 15 titles that we think are going to take £20 million or more this year, which is very much in line with last year when we had 14. So as I said earlier, it's not really the pipeline that's the issue. We've got these big regular releases coming all through the year. But if I just take away the ones that are outside the top 10, again we're seeing a bit of bunching later in the year. So the second half of the year has definitely got more of the top 10 forecast titles. 4 in Q4, 3 in Q3, a bit less at this time of year. So we are going to experience this bunching again. Hopefully this will be the final year that we see this, because obviously we've come out of the strikes, we've come out of the COVID disruptions to productions. So I think hopefully by next year we'll stop seeing this kind of bunching of titles in the same period. Okay, then the final segment I want to take you through is a question that we add to our post-track exit poll periodically, just to kind of canvass people's awareness of the upcoming films over the next 3 or 4 months, and their interest in watching them. So what we've done, we did the post-track fieldwork in 6 cinemas, so everyone that we've interviewed is in the market for watching a film. They're there in the cinema watching one of the 6 titles that we covered over 2 weekends. So on the Valentine's weekend it was Bridget, it was Cap, and it was Heart Eyes. And then the first weekend of March we covered Mickey 17, Marching Powder, and One of Them Days. So pretty diverse range of titles. We've got horror fans, action fans, comedy fans, a real mix. And they're all in the market for a film. So you'd hope they're pretty aware of these major titles that we've got coming up. And because we were mainly interviewing people 13 plus, I didn't put the kids' films in here. So things like Elio, Lilo and Stitch, How to Train Your Dragon, didn't put those on the list. It's more the adult films here. So what do people want to go and watch? It's a 5-point scale. I'm going to show you the top 2 to start with. So one of the best films of the year, or definitely worth seeing. What we're seeing here is things that are kind of legacy interest are at the top of the list. So Superman is obviously there. got Mission Impossible, Karate Kid, Jurassic World, those kind of really well-known, long-running franchises tend to score very well because there's a high level of awareness about what you're going to get if you go and watch those. We're also seeing the return of interest in the superhero films. So Superman's top, we've got Fantastic Four, Thunderbolt's a little bit lower. The ones that people know about, they've heard of the characters, they haven't seen them for a while, so they're excited to see them again. And then what I'm calling horror crossover, so it's a bit more auteur-led. You've got 28 Days Later, you've got Sinners, so very major directors making both of those. And then more sort of light horror, like Final Destination, I Know What You Did Last Summer. So a really good mix of different types of films coming that people are excited because they know what they're going to get, and hopefully they want to see another chapter. However, we have got the session later on today with Michelle about the low slate awareness, so I just wanted to contrast the number of people saying, I don't know about this film, for 2025 in the gold bars, versus when we last asked this question, which was the National Cinema Day in August last year. We're really seeing a much higher level of people saying, I don't know about this film this year. So the average across all those 2025 films is 34% of people saying, I don't know about this film, and the average last August was 23%. So we're 11 points higher this time around. We're better than we were when we asked the question in 2021. We did it around No Time to Die in 2021 after the reopening. The average was 40% then, so our 34% now is better than that 40, but it's not as good as we were 8 months ago when it was only 23. And I looked at whether that was driven by frequency. Perhaps we'd interviewed more people that were infrequent cinema goers, but there was really very little difference between the frequent and the infrequent cinema goers, really just a couple of points. So we are kind of seeing this across the board. A lot of these films are not out for another 3 or 4 months, so of course the marketing activity is going to ramp up a lot before that, but I just wanted to flag this up because we've got plenty of time to do something about it. So hopefully a lot of the discussion over the next 2 days is going to be around how do we connect the right people with the right film. So finally, I thought I'd just leave you with a few takeaways. So really good momentum, going into the strongest start that we've had in 5 years. We've got a really diverse offering of different films, and the more people go to the cinema, the more they're exposed to the posters, the trailers, the marketing materials in the cinema. So we're in a really good place in terms of momentum. We're in a good place as well in terms of the pipeline. I'm going to cross my fingers, say lower risk of supply disruption this year. Hopefully that's going to come to pass. We've got all these popular franchises and stars, and when I say stars, I don't just mean the actors, the directors are obviously quite integral to a lot of these films as well. People know the names. And we've got this significant growth forecast after the plateau. So where's our plus 9% going to come from? It's coming from this diversity of a strong pipeline of big titles. But the awareness is really the issue that I think is the main barrier at the moment. We have got this limited slate awareness, so hopefully over the next couple of days we can talk a lot about how we can collaborate between exhibition distribution, all the different parties, to really connect those audiences with those films. That's me. Thank you.